Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of our Accelerated ID series. My name is Shawntay Skilldigger, and today I'll be talking to you about micro and nano learning experiences. So micro and nano learning it's kind of self-explanatory, right? So when you think of micro, you typically think small. And whenever you think nano, you think even smaller. And that's really what micro and nano learning are about. So whenever we create micro nano learning experiences, we're really creating these very small learning experiences. Sometimes we call them bite-sized or nibble-sized, something like that, to really help describe what they are. So we use these in a variety of ways to support learning solutions or replace the typical or traditional learning experience, or to provide like some kind of drip reinforcement with our students. So these can be set up in a variety of different tools and mediums, and they really do range anywhere from like a quick like 1 minute video all the way up to like 10 minutes. And of course, there's give and take on either end of these. So let's do a little bit more exploring about each of these. So we do see micro and nano learnings every single day. So if you have been on any social media today, there is a good chance that you might have already experienced a micro or nano learning. So think about that. What are some types of learning experiences that we call these informal, but what are some informal learning experiences that you have experienced today or in the last week? Maybe you are watching some kind of exercise, like how do you fix that mommy belly, right? Or how do you build really strong bicep? You're watching like these little bite size or nugget size or nibble size learning experiences that are educating you on how to do things. Or maybe you're watching something on how you can organize a small space, or how you can mix three colors to get like this really great Zen Hugel type of room that's super cozy, right? So what I want you to be thinking about as an instructional designer or as an aspiring instructional designer is how can you take what you are seeing and experiencing on TikTok and an Instagram reel, on Pinterest, Facebook, whatever it is, how can you bring that into the learning experience in your job, right? So let's talk about the benefits of micro and nano learning. What do you think some of the benefits might be of creating these little small pop size or bite size or little pops of learning in your content in the workplace? What might be some of those benefits that that you imagine would be good for either the organization or a department or a learner? So with micro and nano learning, you get opportunities, and you can create many opportunities to provide short and focused learning experiences. You can increase retention and engagement, right? Because if somebody only has to pay attention for 2 minutes, then it's pretty easy to stay focused on that. And in fact, I would say that because things are so short, they can't risk being distracted because they're going to miss something very important because there is just a little pop or just a little window for that learning experience. So your attention has to be high on what it is that you are watching. This morning, I was watching a video while making my daughter's breakfast. I was listening to a recording. I'm taking an online course for something related to my business, and it was so important. I really wanted to hear it. There was like this little micro lesson within the larger recording that I wanted to pay attention to, but I kept getting distracted with, oh, where's the peanut butter? Or, where did somebody put the apples that I cut yesterday? So I had to keep like bringing myself back to what I was doing. And I had to keep hitting that rewind to make sure that I wasn't missing anything. The other thing about your micro and your nano learning is that it's often really a good fit for learning on the go or even just in time learning. So learning on the go means that, it's something you quickly swipe through, you could watch, you can read it. Joni had sent me a 7 taps thing that she had created 4 or 5 weeks ago, 7 taps. That was a really great way to introduce a micro learning where somebody could just like swipe through the different screens. So again, flexible, just in time, on the go. These are some of the benefits. And again, micro lessons are 5 to 10 minutes. These are really your bite-sized learning experiences. And they can be used to take bigger learning experiences and break them down. They can be used to take complex topics and break them down into simpler, or more easy to digest and understand. So it's not like, whoa, so much information at once. So we can often use micro learning as a way to deliver targeted learning experiences. Maybe it covers a specific concept or a specific skill, or maybe it covers a specific objective, right? Because these are short, you often can't have too many objectives because you can only educate someone to the point of them being able to demonstrate something in a very short amount of time, right? You can't boil the whole ocean at once. So you just have to keep it targeted. I had mentioned before that it's good for just in time. So imagine that, somebody works in a call center and someone calls in and they have a unique challenge, but this customer service representative knows that they can go into their library, click on the video or click on some kind of short form text, open it, read about it, and then they come back and answer. So think about how many times that you have used like a chat feature. Maybe you reached out to an organization, you had questions, maybe you needed support on something, and you use that chat feature, and somebody's sitting there, chatting with you, and they say, "Give me just a minute while I look up this specific issue." Odds are they're going to a resource, pulling that up, opening it, educating themselves, and then they're coming back and they're sharing that response with you. So that could be an example of a micro or a nano learning that's just in time for them, right? It could be video, it could be 7 taps, it could be a series of slides with some voiceover. I mean, we could really do a variety of different things, but the point is that we're breaking it down into smaller pieces, making it easier for someone to consume. And whenever you chunk information, it's like it does something with the storage in your brain. Like, oh, hey, Addie, this is what you do for analysis, design. Oh, great. I'm going to store that over here. So sometimes it could just make things simpler. I think of YouTube as like a great example of a lot of micro lessons out there. Anytime I want to learn how to do something, I might search Pinterest. I might search Google. I might go out to YouTube and ask YouTube how you do something because I want to see a how to. I know that I work a lot in Adobe Premiere Pro, and anytime I get stuck on something in Adobe Premiere Pro, I go out to YouTube and I search how to do something specific because there are just so many micro and nano lessons out there. So again, that micro is anything from 5 to 10 minutes, and anything below that would fall into that nano category. But YouTube is a really great repository of all kinds of different micro learnings. All right, so nano learning, again, 5 minutes or less. So instead of calling it bite size, I like to think about this more like nibble size because it's teeny tiny. And just like micro, it could be accessible on the go. And it's really great at reinforcing things that people have already learned. It's really great as a reminder. So I like to use nano in that way. Or sometimes people need to just have like a quick walkthrough of something because maybe they don't understand what it is that they're looking at. Just last week, Katie created an infographic on how to read a particular report. Now, if we wanted to, we could very quickly turn that into like a 2 to 3 minute video, just highlighting the key areas of that infographic that she made. And that would be a great nano lesson for someone to consume just in time when they need it. All right, so examples of informal nano learning that happens. So maybe you learned something on Snapchat. How many of you today or last night watched either a reel on TikTok, Facebook, or Instagram that was educational for you? Or maybe you received an email that had blog information in it. Or maybe you were on Twitter and you saw a link to something that you clicked on and then you went and read more about it, right? We experience informal micro nano learning all the time. So, how do we do this in the workplace? Well, here is one example of how you can do this in the workplace. So, this is a nano learning that was set up to be a follow up reinforcement of an email etiquette training. So, in this example, somebody went through email etiquette training and then they received a message, and it could be, text, it could be email, it could be a company Slack channel, it could be a social media post, if the company has like a Facebook page or something, where it just has like something real quick. I mean, this isn't even 60 seconds. This might be a 15-second read for someone just to get a tip reminder of what a good example of email etiquette is. Now, we're going to talk about some other examples of nano and micro lesson formats that you can use in your workplace. Now, I probably have some teachers here that are on the call today, but whenever I was a classroom teacher, I often started each class because I was social studies and science. My classes changed throughout the day. So I would just have kids rotating through the day. I had anywhere between 80 students and 160 students, depending on how the schedule was set up. So it was just constant rotation. And as teachers, there's usually something administrative that we have to do at the beginning, like, we're collecting papers or we're checking planners or agendas, or we have to take roll, right? So at the beginning of every class, I had a warm up. How many of you had warm ups as teachers? So that warm up was designed to give me a little bit of space to do some of the admin things that I needed to do, but it was also educational and a reinforcer for content that we had already learned, or it was used to help make connections to the lessons that we were going to do that day. So those warm-ups can also be an example of micro and nano learning, right? You give them a little bit of information and then they're doing something with that. So that's one way that we might have used it in the classroom. And you just saw an example of how we could use it in the workplace. But now let's take a look at what are the formats that we can build micro and nano learning in. So video is an obvious one. That's the way that we're consuming it through all these different reels, right? Sometimes that reel will just have somebody pointing at different things, right? Or, you'll see the two videos where somebody over here is just watching, somebody else doing things. They make it fun and engaging. Infographics is another way that we can create micro and nano learning. Sharing case studies, stories, testimonials of what worked, what didn't work, creating reference guides, even some of your course companions or one-pagers, very short e-learning lessons. We could do that. Creating little learning nuggets, right? Instead of like the bite size, but the nuggets. So like that text about the email etiquette or following, sending out some kind of message with a link, any of those things. Putting an educational post into some of our different channels at work, whether it's Slack or it's Teams or an internal Facebook page or SharePoint site or an RSS feed. A lot of organizations have that, or a newsletter. Creating flashcards that people can go through, little mini lectures, maybe a lunch and learn where somebody introduces like 10 minutes of content, then they have a discussion and they hang out and have a little bit of community. Slides, a lot of times you see like the slide shares. How many times have you Googled for something and then you came across somebody's slide share that you clicked through and you read and it had the kind of content that you were looking for? Maybe the whole thing didn't apply, but there was a section. So all of those are examples of formats that we can use to create micro and nano learning in the workplace. And really the only difference between these two, micro and nano, really is just the amount of time, right? So is it 10 minutes, 7 minutes? Is it 2 minutes? Whatever that is. So that's really how we differentiate. And a lot of times we'll just say micro learning, and that can be encompassing of nano. So don't get held up on the language too much. Let's imagine that you've been asked to reinforce specific behaviors with an audience of customer service representatives. How can you use nano and micro learning to do this? All right. So you are the instructional designer and you have been asked to create an experience that reinforces specific behaviors with an audience of service representatives. How can you do that? Thinking about how you might incorporate micro learning, nano learning, how might you approach this where it's reinforcing? So if it's reinforcing, that's telling us that they have already learned something. So maybe they have already been through, a more formal e-learning experience where they learned about customer service. So coming out of this more formal learning, how can we reinforce this? Some things that we might be able to do, maybe we take that 30 to 45-minute micro lesson and that 30 to 45-minute e-learning lesson or course, and maybe we divide some of it, not all of it, but maybe segments of it up into 5 to 10-minute chunks, and then send those back out periodically. So whenever you're thinking about retention, you want to have spaced repetition, right? For retention. So whenever somebody learns something, it's a good idea to have some sort of refresher within 24 hours to help that be retained in memory. But then again, after that 24-hour period, it's a good practice if you can. And as instructional designers, this is often out of our control, but to have a reminder or a refresher or some kind of reinforcer within 24 hours, but then again within 7 days. And then again, maybe in 14 days or 30 days. So if we could create some 5 to 10-minute lessons that we could drip out either, like 24 hours later, where we just do a quick summary, then again, 7 days later about a concept, maybe 14 days later, and then 30 days later, then we have some reinforcing pieces. Now, if that's not a good fit, another option for us would be that we could create some nano learning. Maybe one week we send out an infographic. Maybe another week we send out a 1 to 2 minute video. Or maybe we create like a little library of just in time 1 to 2 minute videos that somebody can go in and access. So these are just a few ways that we could create some reinforcing lessons with micro and nano learning.